Hello, everyone. What we're going to be talking about today is where IT is going. Thanks for taking the time to visit with us. Basically, we'll be talking about the evolution of IT services and the direction that IT is going inside the industry today, sort of where we see the industry today and where we see it in the future, and how Sun sort of fits into that picture. Just to give you a little bit about my background, I'm currently the president of Sun Federal, focusing on the federal government. But before being in that role, I was the CIO for Sun Microsystems itself, and before that, I was a CIO for the Pentagon, and also a CTO and a number of other things like that. So I've been quite around the IT field for some time, and I'm going to give you sort of an IT view. And I often refer to myself as a recovering CIO, so you might see me jump from my pager occasionally as we go through the presentation just from habit. So what we're going to do is talk a little bit about what's going on in IT and where it's going, and how it's going to affect you and what you need to be thinking about. A lot of things I'll talk about. Some of it you can use immediately. Others of it you'll be using different derivatives of what I'll talk about. This is a standard presentation, just like you learned to do in college, where I tell you what I'm going to tell you, then I tell you what I'm going to what I told you. So we'll start off today. I'll spend a little bit of extra time on this agenda slide to sort of go on over what's going on in the industry today. So I'll talk a little bit about the information technology realities, what's going on in the marketplace today. I talk to a lot of CIOs, being a former CIO and being a service person for CIOs today. You can imagine the kinds of stories I hear, so I'll let you know what's going on there. And then we'll talk a little bit about the changing technology stack, and it really is evolving significantly right now. You see, everyone's currently moving to chip multi-threading, and that's becoming the foundation. And it doesn't matter which processor you're buying, threads are going to be very, very important. You can see today that AMD and Intel are currently at 4 threads per chip. Sun's new CMT Niagara 2 chip is at 64 threads per chip. Last year we were at 32 threads. Whether you're going PowerPC, it really doesn't matter what chip it is, they're all going to be multi-threading. And the reason we went to multi-threading is because we used to increase the, if you like, RPMs or the speed of a chip, and over time you got to the point where the chip got so hot that it would melt silicon, and that's obviously a bad thing. So what we started doing is going wide, or adding more cylinders, if you like, or threads to the chip, so we could do more things at once within the chip, and everyone's doing that, and that's going to be a foundation for everything you do. Another thing that's happening now is it's all getting virtualized, and that's going to be very, very important as you move forward for your working with your software vendors and ISVs and stuff like that, to talk to them about this, because you're not going to know how many CPUs you're using. If you remember, maybe 7 years ago or so, we went through a storage virtualization just like this, and it was a little bumpy in the first few years, and now what we're doing is the same thing with CPUs, because the average CPU in a data center is used 5 to 10%, and we want to get that up to 80 or 90%. Just like used to be before SANs and NAS, we had very low utilization of our storage from one machine to another. So that's very, very important, and you're seeing sort of a convergence of open source grid and open source operating systems sort of coming together there. In that area, and we'll talk about that. Open source operating systems, database, and middleware are really the wave of the future. And another thing a lot of people don't realize is those are coming together into one unit now. It used to be that you bought your operating system, your middleware, and your database, but you're seeing more and more with, for instance, Solaris, we integrated Postgres and our middleware suite and identity suite into the operating system. You're going to see that come together. Just like at the desktop, you see things like a media player and a file manager and a browser as part of the operating system. On the server side, you see the database, the middleware, and the operating system kernel coming together and defining what the OS is today. And more they're moving to be open sourced. Consumerization is a very big trend in IT today. It used to be that you came to work and you saw a windowing environment and the internet and a laser printer, and you thought it was good, and then you went home and wanted it at home. Now what happens is people go home and they buy, a new Mac and an iPhone, and they come to work and they say, "Stupid CIO, why aren't you using this at work?" And what that's led to is these consumer devices that are becoming very powerful has reduced their cost significantly because of the volume. But these devices really were never designed to operate in a data center. So what that's led to is the cheap revolution. And you're seeing that more and more, very low capital cost, very low acquisition cost, cost, but the operating cost is going up significantly. For instance, if you bought one of our low-end AMD servers today, which is very power efficient, for around $600–700 price range, you're going to spend 3 times that in its lifetime for the electricity to operate and cool it. So that's getting to be more and more an issue. People are focusing on space and power more and more because of the cheap revolution. We'll talk about what Sun's doing there and how CMT is going to help us there. Software as a service is very big. Everyone uses software as a service. If you use Google or Yahoo or eBay, software as a service is the way things are going today. It's being delivered into your environments. And, more and more CIOs aren't selecting those. They're coming in through consumerization. And I'll give you an example. When I was CIO at Sun, I woke up one day and a third of my sales force was using Salesforce.com, and we never selected it. Maybe 5 years from now, my guess is if you're still running your own mail and calendar system instead of using something like Gmail or Yahoo corporate mail at work, you're probably a Luddite. You're probably going to be out in the cold. And if you're an organization that's got to run it yourself, what you're going to see is that kind of software as a service being consolidated more and more and then delivered over the network, whether you're delivering it to yourself or it's coming in from the outside. And you're probably going to see a mix of those things. SOA is going to be very big because as you pull in these services from everywhere, you want to aggregate it into a single view and operate as a single enterprise. And SOAs, I believe the past predicts the future. SOA is just another remote procedure call. We went through socket calls and then ONC-RPC, which was incidentally invented by Sun, and then OSF-DCE and Corba, and now we're on SOA. So the same problems we had then are the same problems we'll have now. It's just newer technology. Information lifecycle management, you're all familiar with that. How are you going to manage all that data? The latest statistics I've heard is that 42 gigabytes per second are now long-term storage on devices inside data centers. That's rated and backed up, and that doesn't include like what's on the desktop or on DVDs or thumb drives or other things like that. And how are you going to manage all that data and keep it from going in the wrong place? I mean, one of the scariest things for a CIO today is I can load 8 gig onto my cell phone. That's Sun's entire personnel history for every employee in the company I can walk out the door with. How do you control that data? And that's where identity, security, compliance, other things become very, very important, and we'll talk about that. And then I'll talk about Sun's strategy and what we're doing to react to this change in the industry and sort of help it move forward, and then sort of give a crystal ball. What will IT look like 5 years from now? So when I talk to CIOs today, what do I hear? I hear they're all out of space and power. And of course, it's happened to me here at Sun, where I wanted to add servers in a data center, and my provider came back and said, "Sorry, we actually have physical space, but we've maxed the electricity out." So space and power, maybe 5 years ago, that became a big focus for Sun. Reducing cost, every CIO, every business manager is focused on cost reduction. Cost reduction, get the most for your money is very, very important. Mobile workforce, people want to work on every operating system, every device, everywhere, all the time. How do you enable that? And one of the ways we enable that is through visual web services at Sun, and I'll talk about that. Improved business process. IT doesn't exist for IT's sake alone. Every CIO is concerned about it, and how are you going to do that? And that's why SOA is becoming quite important to bring those together, and including having a flexible infrastructure in there. People often feel that IT is not moving fast enough. Security and compliance is extremely important as well. Sarbanes-Oxley, inside the government, all sorts of other places. How do you control your data? How do you control access? How do you audit it? And then the explosion of data I mentioned before. So if you look at this stack today, you can see basically what you have is the foundation based on chip multi-threading, and it doesn't matter which chip you're buying, so threads are going to be very, very important. All of that's going to be virtualized, and you see sort of the operating system even and the virtualization layer coming together. Your open source middleware, database, and OS are together. You're going to have software as a service being delivered into your enterprise and coming in from the outside, and that's important to note. You're going to have an enterprise service bus based on SOA. Information lifecycle management is going to be running as a service, but identity is really the key to this. Everything comes through this. I'm not aware of a major enterprise today that isn't deploying a large-scale identity management system. And then you're going to have visual web services for your end users. You're going to have partner services that are usually non-visual. And then you're going to have consumerization, the cheap revolution, just sweeping across these every 6 months or so and affecting significant change. So how do you adapt to those changes today?